why comparisons are the path to hell. I know that can sound super dramatic, but I'm actually being really serious. Comparisons only lead to innumerable suffering and pain, and you can't get out of it until you stop. So what are comparisons? Why are they so detrimental? And what can we do instead? My name is Jennifer Van Wyk, and I am a psychotherapist, a humanitarian, and a best-selling author. So first, comparisons, there's a few different ways that we might compare ourselves to others. So comparisons are usually when you compare one part of yourself to one part of somebody else. Oftentimes it's a part of yourself that you don't like, and it's a part of another person that they are really good at or exceptionally good at, right? So already you're setting yourself up for failure. Even if you did compare the whole of you to the whole of them, which we'll never always really understand, it's still, you'll always often do it to people that are better than you or perceived to be better or more successful than you. So often that comparison just makes you feel like crap. They makes you feel like you're underperforming. There's something wrong with you. Yeah, there's some way that you are lacking, right? The other way that we can compare ourselves is to people below us. That can be ways of, I mean, I work with a lot of humanitarians, and many humanitarians struggle with the fact of how come I'm struggling with this when there's people that are so much worse off than us. So when you compare yourself even to people that are perceived to be doing worse off than you, it's often creates this sort of sense of guilt, right? Or misery. But it doesn't matter if you're comparing yourself to somebody better or somebody worse. It doesn't do anybody good. It creates a judgment, and it also creates a barrier. Maybe you admire someone, and then if you compare yourself to that person you admire, then you're automatically saying, you're better than me, than this, and therefore, how do you connect? You're creating a distance between you and that person. So even when you compare yourself to loved ones or your partner or your friends, it creates a barrier and a wall. So comparison is, not only does it create your own suffering and pain and misery, but it also creates a lot of disconnect between ourselves and others. So that is why, or what comparison is. And why do we do it, right? Because if it just creates pain, then how come we do it every day? I mean, Instagram is a perfect example, and social media, and why that leads to higher rates of depression and anxiety. And it's because we're comparing ourselves to these fake ideals oftentimes, or these non-achievable goals, right? And so it makes us feel like we're inadequate, like we'll never do it. But then if that's so much, if it makes us depressed and it makes us anxious, then why do we keep on doing it? And the answer is because we're trying to be better people. We're using comparison to try and motivate ourselves to be better. And this is a classic love over fear moment, right? We want to run away from fear because all of us just have this innate desire to become better, to improve, to grow, to feel like we're moving forward in life. And many of us only know how to do that through fear-based things. So beating yourself up, saying I should be better. Should is my least favorite word. Going into things like focusing on our weaknesses and what we're bad at, and all the things that we don't like about ourselves. That's all very fear-based. And it does work in the short term, right? Like maybe you start meditating more. If I'm comparing myself and I'm not spiritual enough compared to that person, then maybe it will motivate me to try and do a little bit more spiritual things. But in the long run, whenever you use fear, what happens is you really erode your sense of self. So that's one. It really, really weakens us. If you think about running a marathon, right? If you want to really run a marathon well, you eat well, you sleep well, you practice a little bit, you don't strain yourself too much, you build up strength slowly, right? You don't throw yourself down the stairs. You don't hit yourself with a bat to try and make yourself go faster, right? Because physically beating yourself up, that's why we call it beating ourselves up. But when you physically do that, you're weakening yourself. You're not setting yourself up for success. In fact, it's the exact opposite. So really, when you use comparison to try and motivate yourself to be a better person, you weaken yourself, you set yourself up for failure, and you make it less possible or less probable that you will be a better person, okay? The second thing that comparison does is it makes us judgmental. That's what it is at its core, right? You're judging who you are, you're judging who someone else is, and then you're judging who comes out on top, right? So when you are judgmental, again, that creates a disconnect. It creates a disconnect between you, between others, between you and your life, between you and your goals, right? So judgment, as much as it can be useful in some circumstances, like, oh, should I do this? Or is this place a safe place to go? When you use it in terms of comparison, it really just creates more disconnect, which leads to more loneliness, which leads to more suffering and more pain, right? The third thing of why we want to do, or why we want to stop comparing, is because it makes it more difficult to truly love ourselves, which then makes it absolutely impossible to truly love others. People often really fight this concept that you can't love somebody else unless you really love yourself, because a lot of people have this idea that, oh no, I can easily love others way more than I love myself. But really, it's just cause and effect. You cannot give somebody bananas unless you have bananas. It's impossible, right? So if you do not love yourself, you do not have love to give to others, right? So when you erode your self-love through comparison, which is all comparison will ever achieve, it just erodes your self-love, then you are then diminishing the amount of love that you can give to others. And that, I think, is super tragic, which is why I'm making a whole video on this. So what can you do? Again, I don't believe in shame. I don't believe in guilt, right? So there's no shame or guilt or judgment when we compare, because it is inevitable. And so I like to even look at comparison as a gift. Comparison, when I notice that I'm comparing myself, it is a gift. It's a wake-up call. It's a flag and a reminder that I can then focus on something else. So usually what I like to do is create a mantra. And unless I'm working directly with you, because we can create mantras that are actually detrimental. So unless you've worked with me directly or you're very good at creating mantras, I would suggest using the mantra of I am enough, or I am lovable just as I am. One of those two mantras that really worked for you, unless you really know how to create a mantra. But every time you see yourself comparing, or you notice that you're comparing yourself to others or others to others, that is just a reminder. It's a little tap of, hey, time for you to say your mantra. And then you just say this mantra over and over and over until that comparison thought goes away. I hope you found this helpful. I really hope you start to become aware of how often you are comparing, because we all do it. I still do it. We're all human, and that's beautiful, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's just an opportunity for us to create more love, more connection. When we have that awareness of when we're comparing, and then we shift it to, okay, I'm enough. I don't need to compare, or I'm lovable just as I am. Please let me know if you have any thoughts or comments, and feel free to like and subscribe down below. Take care.